If one day you were kidnapped and raised among an enemy tribe, what would you do? Forget your roots or see them as family? Amid the vast plains of the American South, his mother, Cynthia Ann Parker, a white woman, was a victim of a raid, later known among the Comanche as Nadua. His father, Peta Nocona, a fierce warrior chief of the Quahati band of the Comanche. Fate bound him between two worlds that could never coexist. Growing up in the flames of war, Quanah Parker became the last chief of the free Comanche. He fought, he lost, and he stood at the edge of survival for an entire people. But what shocked the world was not his battles, it was his final choice. Why did an undefeated warrior choose a path no one expected? Beneath the somber Texas sky, where the prairie winds howled like the echoes of ancestors, the night of 1871 became an unforgettable turning point. As darkness fell, cold and silent, it was suddenly shattered by the thunder of galloping hooves. A group of Comanche riders charged through the night, their figures ghostly under the silver moonlight. Their target, the Warren wagon train. In an instant, chaos erupted. Screams tore through the night. Flames roared, devouring everything in their path. Nearly 70 horses were taken, swept away in a storm of dust. But by the time the U.S. troops reacted, the Comanche warriors had already vanished into the darkness like mist dissolving at dawn. Quanah Parker, a young chief with piercing eyes and a heart ablaze with pride, was believed to have played a role in planning such raids, though the direct leaders of the Warren wagon train attack were Satanta and Big Tree. In the blink of an eye, the military camp descended into chaos. Screams shattered the night, flames engulfed the tents, and nearly 70 horses were dragged away in a whirlwind of dust. By the time the U.S.'s soldiers awoke and gave chase, the raiders had already vanished into the darkness like mist dissolving at dawn. The one leading the attack was none other than Quanah Parker, a young warrior with a sharp gaze and a burning pride. This was neither the first nor the last time he would clash with the U.S. Army. Those who wielded guns and harbored ambitions to seize Comanche land, paving the way for the white settlers. The conflict between the Comanche and the U.S. Army raged for decades. But in 1871, Colonel Ranald Mackenzie, a ruthless yet highly effective commander, entered the battlefield. He was determined to crush the Quahada Comanche, the fiercest band of warriors led by Quanah Parker. Then came the Red River War, 1874-1875. Mackenzie was no fool. He knew he was facing a master tactician. But Quanah was not one to simply flee. He tracked Mackenzie in return, striking back whenever the opportunity arose. Each time Mackenzie thought he had cornered the Comanche, Quanah and his warriors would vanish into the endless plains. But Mackenzie had a cruel strategy. The Battle of Palo Duro Canyon, 1874, where he slaughtered 400 of the Quahada's horses, delivering a devastating blow to their survival. The Comanche were no ordinary Native American tribe. For nearly 200 years, they dominated the vast lands stretching from Texas to New Mexico, living off the hunt and moving with the great buffalo herds. They drove out the Spanish, pushed back the Mexicans, held off the U.S. Army, and forced countless other tribes into submission. Their empire had no throne or palace, only the endless plains. They had no king, but every band was bound by one thing: unmatched horsemanship. On the battlefield, they were a storm, their sharp arrows and lances far deadlier than their enemies' guns. At their peak, the Comanche numbered as many as 40. But by the time of Quanah Parker, only 3,000 to 5,000 remained the last souls fighting for their people. Quanah Parker was born around 1848, carrying the blood of two worlds. His father, Peta Nocona, was a fearless Noconi chief. His mother, Cynthia Ann Parker, had once been a white girl abducted in a raid, but had long since abandoned her past to become Nadwa, a true Comanche. Quanah was the bridge between two cultures, a fusion of strength and sorrow. As a boy, he watched his village burn as U.S.'s soldiers stormed in, taking his mother and younger sister away. Amid the smoke and flames, he witnessed his family torn apart. From that moment, he was no longer a child, he was a warrior, with hatred seared into his soul. He sought out the Quahada, the fiercest of the Comanche, those who had never known surrender. There, he hardened himself through long days on horseback, mastering the art of shooting arrows while riding at full speed and leading daring raids. By his early 20s, he had proven himself worthy of leadership. When he fell in love with Wikia, the daughter of a powerful family, but was forbidden to marry her, he defied tradition and took her away, evading pursuit for a year. A full year on horseback did not break him. When he returned, he was no longer just a warrior, he was hailed as Periabo, the youngest chief in Quahada history. Under his command, the Quahada continued to defy the U.S. Army, living free as their ancestors once had. But the era of the Comanche was fading. By the early 1870s, a catastrophe struck, not by fire and bullets, but by greed. The demand for buffalo hides in the east skyrocketed, and white hunters slaughtered millions of bison, the lifeblood of the Comanche, without mercy. The Great Plains, once darkened by endless herds, were now littered with rotting carcasses beneath the scorching sun. With their food supply wiped out, the Comanche slowly succumbed to hunger. In 1875, the U.S. Army delivered the final blow. At Palo Duro Canyon, they destroyed nearly 1,400 Quahada horses, crippling the tribe's ability to move and hunt. With no horses and no food, Quanah faced an impossible choice: fight to the death or surrender to ensure his people's survival. He chose life. He led the last of the Quahada to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where they became part of a reservation. But Fort Sill was another kind of battlefield. The Comanche were hunters, not farmers. They now depended on government rations, moldy sacks of flour, and tattered scraps of cloth. Quanah saw opportunity in change. He leased Comanche land to white ranchers, negotiated for better rations, built schools and homes, and fought tirelessly to secure his people's rights. He mastered the new battlefield diplomacy. The Comanche had never followed a single leader, but now they chose Quanah as their representative. Even his former enemy, Ranald Mackenzie, came to respect him. Quanah befriended politicians, rode alongside President Theodore Roosevelt at his inauguration, and earned admiration in both worlds. Yet, he never forgot who he was. He kept his long braids, defended the Native American church, and preserved the traditions of his people. When he died, the Comanche created a new title chairman in his honor, recognizing him as their last great leader. And today, over 16,000 of his descendants carry his legacy, like embers from a fire that once set the plains ablaze beneath the moonlit sky. Although he had led the Comanche into a new era, Quanah Parker carried a deep sorrow in his heart, the loss of his mother, Cynthia Ann Parker. In 1860, she was taken by the U.S. Army after they raided a Comanche village on the Peace River. But Nadwa, her Comanche name, was no longer a white woman. She had forgotten her old language and refused to return to the world she once belonged to. Separated from her son and everything she knew, Nadwa withered away in sorrow. 3 years later, she passed away, carrying with her the despair of never returning to her people. When Quanah Parker heard the news, his heart shattered. For years, he had dreamed of seeing his mother again, of hearing her stories from the past, of watching her smile just one more time. But fate had stolen that chance. Unable to reunite with his mother in life, Quanah made one final decision to keep her close forever. He searched for her burial site, and in 1910, he brought her remains to Fort Sill, where he lived. He laid her to rest in the Comanche cemetery, marking her as an inseparable part of the tribe of his family. In 1911, when Quanah Parker took his last breath, he was buried right beside his mother. His gravestone bore a simple but powerful inscription, Quanah Parker, the last chief of the Comanche. Beneath the vast Texas sky, mother and son were finally reunited among the plains they once called home, in the whispers of the wind across the endless prairie, where their spirits would forever roam free, just as they had in the days long past.